Okay, so this is a beautiful love story. This is, and to me, this is, when I look into the eyes of another human being, I kind of have this experience of something there that I know, but something there that's ultimately unfathomable too. And it seems to me that one aspect of what you were trying to do was to kind of challenge that unfathomability and to, like you said at the start of it, when you fall in love, you're drunk, you're intoxicated, you want to fall into that thing with that person, surrender, give over to it, go as far into. It's like an invitation to the drunkenness of another person. And you feel like you go actually further into that, to challenge that loneliness, the solipsism of being a person. But I just wonder how far was it possible to go, and did you find limits and the frustrations of when I look into the eyes of my lover, there's still something there that I just don't know.
Wow, that's a beautiful question and thought. I mean, it's absolutely true that Jay and myself fell in love instantly, and it was like tumbling into, well, she used to call me the White Rabbit. And she sort of saw me as the white rabbit that drew her into this magical place where there was nothing refused on any level, which she'd never had happen in her life before, for various reasons, childhood and so on, Catholic parents, all those kinds of things. And also just being a woman in New York who ran away from home at 14 and put herself through nursing college by being a dominatrix, and also got involved in experimental theatre and performance. So she was, although she was so much younger than me in years, actually far more sophisticated. So to me the mystery was, how did she become so incredible, so fast, and how fantastic to finally be proven right in my fantasy from childhood that there has to be someone else in this world, on this planet, that can feel the same way and be the same way and reflect in a sort of positive way, not in a sort of consuming way, but actually reflect so that things just spiral more and more powerfully upwards into something beyond imagination.
There's the chemical concept of miscibility, of how much two things can mix, and the sort of compounds that are produced, and the gas and energy and all the other things that are produced is something that I thought of when I looked at this too. And Marie, when I spoke to her about the making of the film, she said sometimes just the energy of the intimacy was so strong she had to go away.
Yeah. Well, we used to have little sayings, we still do. See a cliff, jump off. When in doubt, be extreme. And so we would taunt each other to always push, and we still are. As far as we're concerned, we'd already decided this project would go on beyond physical, bodily existence. That's one of the reasons she would always say the body's a cheap suitcase. It just carries around the mind for a while, and then you throw it away. And so we've always intended to, if it's at all possible, reconvene in another place outside time and space. One might say another dimension, maybe another world, another galaxy where one continues with the adventures. But we've never ever believed there was an end in sight, and there shouldn't be an end in sight. There should always be more, and it should always be challenging and amazing and shared.
Okay. What else did I want to ask? See, I told you I couldn't do this.
You did pretty well. Sensing amazing things.
When I was a teenager in the 1970s, and I wanted to make music that shocked or seduced people into freedom, as teenagers like to do. So when I heard Throbbing Gristle, what I got from it, DOA was the big album that really affected me in my, was that 1976 or something?
78, it came out.
Yeah, 78. And I realised at the time that in order to do that, there had to be an element of taking people with you as well as going, "Bah!" in their face. And we knew that anything could be music and that there was a fabulous musical sublime in the mundanity of everyday sound from John Cage. We had all of that. But what I got from Throbbing Gristle was not the possibilities of what music could be and do, but of song and the form of song and what could be considered a song. And
thank you. You're the first person who realised it. I've been waiting for somebody to tell me that for about 35.
And so, I looked at Throbbing Gristle, which had a really big impact on me. There was the Ramones, and there was Throbbing Gristle, and there was the first Suicide album. These are things that changed my life as a teenage musician. And I see it as part of something that includes ABBA, and that includes January by Pilot.
Yes.
Sick and tired, you've been hanging on me. Yeah.
Yes, because he was a stripper for a while, and they used to strip to songs like that. So I have a weird memory of pop music. I see removed bras. G-string everywhere when I hear all that 70s.
So I'm glad that you said that you've been waiting to hear that, because that's so you were aware of that, and that's something that you were trying to do there.
Yeah, obviously a big breakthrough. There were, to me, gosh, this sounds awfully egocentric, but there were only 1, 2, maybe 3 breakthroughs with lyrics and the structures of songs. Bob Dylan was a huge sort of shift in the possibility of the lyric and the song and its function, what it could talk about. And he took it from strict politics to surreal nonsense where you made up your own meanings. Mm-hmm. And then, for me anyway, the next thing really was Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground. And Beefheart too. Those came around the same time for me. And Lou Reed took the lyric to the street and to sort of a filmic, a movie-like description of things that were really going on. People that were considered outcasts, that were included by him in the sort of possibilities of song. And then it just dawned on me that there should be no limits at all on what could be the subject of a song. That in fact, just as we said, why learn 3 chords, when Punk said we should learn 3 chords and form a band, we thought, why should a song have any limitations? The imagination should never, ever have a fence built around it, should never, ever have an ending. And so, deliberately, we saw it with all the lyrics that we wrote, that it was really important to report back on the experience of life, both beautiful and awful. Of course, we got labelled with always talking about the awful, but in fact, if you look at the ratio of songs, there's maybe a handful that are dealing with atrocities. And there's lots of love songs, and there's lots of hilarious, silly songs, like What a Day. What a Day was, we were in the marketplace with the dog, and these old ladies were at the bus stop and they were going to each other, "Oh, what a day, what a day, oh, it's an awful day." And the other one goes, "Yeah, well, what a day, oh, what a day, yeah, you go to the shops, yeah, oh, what a day." And that was the song. And it's one of my favourite TG songs, and it's just lifted off the street like that, you know, but it becomes something else when it's recontextualised, and that's always fascinated me, where there's a way that you see something. And it's that moment between being asleep and awake, when you dream or you think you've thought of something amazing but you can't quite wake up. the moment, when are you dead? When is the body dead? When is the mind dead? All those sort of lines that we take for granted in day-to-day conversation, but none of them are fixed. We don't know where it begins and ends. We don't know where things meet. And of course now science agrees with particle theory that the gaps between the particles that make up bigger particles are equal to distances of hundreds of miles. So the universe is almost completely empty.
Yeah. And so there's this kind of...
if you can understand the relevance,
yeah.
That's something that we apply to the lyric in the song.
Yeah. And there is in that also this play of the dissolving of limits, which is a really, really continual thing in the work, all the way through from the very beginning, bashing your head up against limits and just dissolving through limits.
And you're right about the strategies. With TG ended in 81, and it mainly ended for me. We were the first person to say, we've got to stop, and the others went, well, yeah. And it was because it had become too easy. There'd almost become a formula that was being iterated by industrial music as it spread. And of course that's not challenging. And when we made the first Psychic TV album, the first song we finished was Just Drifting. And that had an orchestra and was based on my interpretation of Frank Sinatra doing a ballad, believe it or not. Now we cried with laughter in the studio, thinking, the TG fans are going to hate this. That's great. Then I had to start thinking again. And times change, the punk thing, the industrial thing, all those different actions were because of the way that the world was at the time. England was falling apart with a 3-day week, and Thatcher and Reagan, all that mess. But then, if you are fortunate enough to get people's attention, there comes a point where you have to reconsider how to communicate. And that demands respect of the people you're speaking to. You get a responsibility. And it's no longer just the yelling and shouting. Suddenly, you have a duty to try to be as honest as you can to the people that are listening, and to try to keep explaining what you're perceiving and why you're seeing it that way, and why things are dissolving the way they are in terms of what you think of reality. And so, PTV has always been an ongoing, amorphic vehicle for us to have a dialogue with society at any given time.